I'm not sure what to make of that conclusion right now. But we might... is it too early to judge Brexit? It is, isn't it? It's still too early to judge Brexit. It's so hard to prove though, isn't it? It's hard to prove any of this. But I guess what I'm saying is Brexit the kind of problem where it's a matter of opinions or a matter of facts? Like, is the UK in the EU or out of the EU just different, but not necessarily better or worse? Right? Like if staying or leaving is different but not objectively better or worse, then it will be a matter of opinion. But if it is a matter of like objective better or worse, then it will be a matter of fact. One, two, three, four, five. But even if it is a matter of fact, we can't actually know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like what exactly will happen until it happens, because it's just too complex to model accurately. Although, you know, they've tried to model it. Basically, the economists say the UK will lose money. The UK economy will shrink is basically the answer of the mathematical modeling. So there's that. Two, three, four, five. Which I guess that is what voting is an opinion poll. Voting is an opinion poll. Democracy is an opinion poll. And whether an opinion poll is a good way to govern depends on what kind of problem you're trying to solve. Statistically, right? Statistically, the people who have no idea what's going on will vote randomly, and the randomness will cancel each other out. And then the people who do know what's going on will all consistently answer the same way. And when all the randomness cancels out, and then you're left with only the people who know what's going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Theoretically, that's how democracy can work. Even when most people have no idea what's going on, democracy can still work because the random nonsense cancels out. That is assuming that the people who don't know what's going on will vote randomly, which they might not. Because like humans have certain patterns in their biases. Like we're all humans, and so we all have similar biases, right? And so we have a tendency to make the same mistakes as everyone else. So when a lot of people are wrong, they don't necessarily vote randomly. They might all vote wrongly in the same way. Because we're all vulnerable to the same bias, or the same kinds of biases. Which is when democracies fail. Or by fail I mean make bad decisions. One, two, three, 4, 5. I wish somebody smarter than me would like do stuff like this. A statistical analysis of the reliability of democratic referendums. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what political science should be, right? What is political science anyway? And the thing is, they do this sort of stuff with market research, right? When they do opinion polls for business purposes, like brand research and market research and stuff like that, they do actually put a lot of care and thought into making sure that they ask the right questions and get the right answer. Well, not right answers, get useful answers, right? If it's a business market research, get the answers that will make the most money. In political referendums, unlike market research, there's a lot less of that. In fact, if you try to do that, you might get accused of like manipulating the election. Saying is democracy is a little bit too much face-based, not enough science-based in my opinion. Like if you actually compare market research to democratic referendums, it's so primitive. The voting is so primitive. Like you just vote and you count it up and that's it. You don't do any statistics. You don't do any scaling, you don't do any adjustment, you don't do any analysis. I mean, there's some analysis, I guess. But it's it's so little math, it's so little science involved, just counting numbers. Is that really the best way to do it? I'm not sure that it is. Oh well. Like when I did my PhD, the assumption is that you would do some statistical analysis to make sure that the data you got was good. Right, that's just by default, you assume that you have to analyze it and do some sort of adjustment to your raw data. Like if you don't do any analysis, the examiner would just say, "Hey, where's your analysis?" Like they would assume, they assume that the analysis and the adjustments are necessary. Whereas like that's not how we think about voting at all. Even though it's a similar kind of thing, it's an opinion poll. Like we assume the voting data is sacred and it's just correct. That's just the will of the people. Whereas any other sort of opinion polling, you assume that the data is bad. Unless your analysis tells you it's not bad. I'm just saying. Maybe we're taking too much for granted. And I'm pretty sure it's solvable too. It's not like it's not a solvable problem. I think it's a problem that has a solution. Somebody just needs to do it. We're missing those. Cut that. That's great. The other thing is, if you sample properly, you don't need everybody to vote. If you do a proper random sampling, you only need like a few thousand people to vote to get an accurate representation of the whole electorate. Which, I mean, that would reduce the cost of democracy quite a bit. And that's just like statistically, like you can statistically calculate how reliable the outcome is based on the sample size. And again, like that's something where like it's mathematically true, but that people won't accept. People will not accept randomly picking 10,000 people to decide who your next president is. Even though statistically that is actually perfectly representative. No one would accept that. Like, why do they get to choose but I don't get to choose? Like, right? And so people would demand that everybody gets to vote, or unless they want to rig the vote somehow. But like any fair-minded person would demand everybody gets to vote, when in fact it's not how many people vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not how many people vote that counts. Once you get above like 10,000, it's how you sample that counts. If your sampling is biased, then your results will be biased. If your sampling is not biased, then the results will not be biased. And you don't need to involve everybody. Like that's just a wasteful use of resources, objectively speaking. But the fact that it's like mathematically true doesn't mean people would accept it. I need to put it here, I think. Let's do that. That cuts, and that cuts. One, two, three, four, five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, if we maybe that's why we don't do it. If we like do a thorough study of what kinds of questions an opinion poll is good at answering and which kinds of questions they're bad at answering, that would reveal, that would naturally reveal like what the weaknesses of democracy is. And maybe that's why we just don't do it. Because people don't want to admit that democracy has weaknesses, which it has. News alert: democracy